Number 1. Tikal's Zeolite water filtration. Deep in the rainforest of the Petén lowlands of Guatemala stands the Maya city of Tikal. Its temples rise more than 60 meters above the jungle floor. But the city had a problem that had nothing to do with stone. Tikal sits on porous limestone. It has no rivers. It has no lakes. For part of every year, the rain simply stops. A city of tens of thousands of people had to store every drop it drank. To do that, the Maya built great reservoirs, and in the year 2020, a team from the University of Cincinnati found something inside one of them that changed how we think about these people. The researchers, led by the anthropologist Kenneth Tankersley, along with Nicholas Dunning and David Lentz, published their findings in the journal Scientific Reports. Here's what puzzled them. Most of Tikal's reservoirs were poisoned. The temple and palace reservoirs held toxic mercury and blooms of cyanobacteria, the blue-green algae that produced toxins strong enough to survive boiling. The mercury came from cinnabar, a bright red pigment the Maya prized, washing into the water. Drinking from these pools would have made people sick. But one reservoir, called Corriental, stayed clean. The question was why. The answer was a layer of two minerals packed into the reservoir. The first was crystalline zeolite, a blend of the forms clinoptilolite and mortonite. The second was coarse quartz sand. Together they formed a natural filter, and it appears to have been placed right at the point where water flowed into the reservoir, exactly where a modern engineer would put it. Zeolite is a microporous mineral, an aluminosilicate whose crystal structure is riddled with tiny cages. Those cages trap microbes, ammonia, and heavy metals as water passes through. It works like a molecular sieve. Zeolite also softens water and pulls out ammonia through a process called cation exchange, the same property that makes it valuable in modern aquaculture and municipal treatment today. The Maya did not find this mineral by accident. The nearest source of zeolite was volcanic rock at a site called Bajo de Azucar, about 30 kilometers to the northeast. Someone identified it, understood what it did, and hauled it across the landscape to line a drinking reservoir. This is the oldest known use of zeolite to purify water anywhere on Earth, in place around 2,000 years ago. Now, consider the modern world. Water treatment plants today still use zeolite and sand filtration to clean drinking water. The Maya arrived at the same solution on their own, roughly 19 centuries before Western science formalized it in the 20th century. Some researchers now suggest a low-cost filter modeled on Tikal could help communities without clean water today. A civilization we remember for pyramids had quietly solved a problem we are still solving. And if they could purify water with a mineral, what could they do with the wind? Number 2. The Nashtifan Windmills. In the far northeast of Iran, near the border with Afghanistan, there is a small town called Nashtifan. Its name is thought to come from the words for storm's sting. That is not a poetic exaggeration. This region is battered by what locals call the 120-day winds, gusts that can top 120 kilometers per hour. Instead of fighting that wind, the people of Nashtifan harnessed it, and they did so more than 1,000 years ago. Standing on a ridge above the town is a long wall of windmills. They are built from clay, straw, and wood, and they rise 15 to 20 meters tall. These are not the windmills you picture from the Dutch countryside. They are vertical axis windmills, a much older design. The blades are flat wooden panels mounted around a central upright shaft. When the wind strikes them, the shaft spins, and that shaft connects directly to a millstone below that grinds wheat into flour. The design traces back to the Sistan region, described in written sources by the 9th century. The historian Al-Masudi wrote about Persian windmills used to grind grain and draw water. What makes the vertical axis design so clever is what it does not need. A European windmill has to be turned to face the wind. These do not. They catch wind from any direction. The clay walls around them act like funnels, squeezing and accelerating the airflow onto the blades, a Venturi effect achieved with mud brick. About 30 of the original mills still stand at Nashtifan. Within living memory, they were kept running by a single caretaker named Ali Muhammad Etibari. They are now a National Heritage Site of Iran and sit on the country's tentative list for World Heritage status. Here is where the past reaches into the present. Modern engineers have designed vertical axis wind turbines, the Darius and Savonius types, and the advantages they celebrate are exactly the ones the Persians used. The machinery sits at ground level, so repairs need no dangerous climbing. The turbine accepts wind from every direction. There are fewer moving parts to fail. A 1,000-year-old mill of clay and wood embodies principles that wine power companies market as innovations. The tragedy is that the tradition is fading as the last millers pass away. But controlling wind is one thing. Controlling a river is another, and for that we travel to China. Number 3. The Dujiangyan irrigation system. Around the year 256 BCE, during the Warring States period, a governor of the state of Qin named Li Bing faced a violent river. The Min River poured down from the mountains onto the Chengdu Plain in Sichuan, flooding it in the wet season and starving it in the dry. Li Bing, with help from his son, built a solution so effective that it is still running today, more than 2,200 years later. It is called Dujiangyan, and it is the oldest surviving irrigation system in the world that uses no dam at all. The genius is in 3 parts working together. The first is a levee shaped like a fish's mouth, the Yuzui. It sits in the middle of the river and splits the flow into 2 channels, an inner one for irrigation and an outer one for flood. Because of the shape of the riverbed, in the dry season, about 60% of the water flows into the inner irrigation channel. In flood season, that ratio reverses on its own, shedding the dangerous excess down the outer channel. The second part is the flying sand spillway, the Feishayan. Rivers carry silt, and silt clogs channels. This spillway uses the river's own spinning vortex to fling sand and gravel back out of the inner channel, keeping it clear without anyone digging it out. The third part is the bottleneck, a channel cut clean through Mount Yuli to control how much water enters. Li Bing had no gunpowder. To break the hard rock, his workers heated it with fire and then doused it with water until it cracked. That single cut took about 8 years. The original builders had no steel and no concrete. They worked with bamboo baskets filled with stones, called zhulong, and wooden tripods called matcha, materials that were cheap, flexible, and easy to replace when they wore out. Li Bing was so revered for the work that a temple, the Erwang Miao, was later built to honor him and his son as deified engineers. Today, Dujiangyan irrigates more than 5,300 square kilometers of farmland and serves tens of millions of people. It turned Sichuan into what the Chinese call the land of abundance. Modern hydrologists study it because its self-cleaning silt management is something dam engineers still struggle with. The design reflects the Taoist idea of working with nature rather than fighting it. And Li Bing codified an annual maintenance routine that still guides the upkeep more than 2,000 years later. A dam traps sediment and disrupts the ecosystem. Dujiangyan works with the river instead of blocking it. When a massive earthquake struck Sichuan in 2008 and damaged modern structures nearby, the ancient works largely held. Water, it turns out, was tamed in the wettest of places. But what about the driest? Number 4. The Nazca Puquios. The Nazca region of southern Peru is one of the driest places on the entire planet. Some parts see almost no rain for years. And yet, around 1,500 years ago, the Nazca people farmed here, growing maize, beans, squash, and cotton. Their secret lies underground, in a system of aqueducts called the Puquios. From the surface, the most striking feature is a set of spiral funnels dug into the earth, called ojos, the Spanish word for eyes. They corkscrew downward like stone whirlpools. In 2016, the researcher Rosa Lasaponara and a team from the Italian National Research Council used satellite imagery to map the full network, and argued that it was far more sophisticated than anyone had realized. There are around 36 Puquios, and remarkably, many of them still deliver water to fields today. Here's the clever part. Those spiral openings are not just access points. Their shaped funnels wind down into the tunnels below. The moving air creates changes in pressure that actually help push water through the underground channels toward the fields. The system taps into groundwater and subsurface aquifers fed from the distant Andean foothills. The channels are lined with river cobbles and were originally roofed with beams of huarango wood and stone slabs. Because the water travels underground, it does not evaporate in the desert heat, and it keeps flowing even during droughts that would dry any surface stream. The ojos also let people climb down to clean the channels, a job local farmers still perform together every year. There is a lively debate among scholars about the Puquios. La Saponara's team saw them as a Nazca response to a drying climate. The archaeologist Katharina Schreiber has argued that some may date later, even to the early colonial period, pointing to their resemblance to Spanish waterworks. That resemblance raises a deeper question, because the Puquios look a great deal like the Connaught tunnels of Persia and North Africa. Did the idea spread across the world, or did two peoples invent it separately? Whatever the answer, the achievement stands. This is desert irrigation that runs on wind and gravity, with no pumps and no energy input, still working after 15 centuries. Modern desert agriculture burns fuel and electricity to do the same job. And from moving water without power, we turn to measuring time without electricity. Number 5. Susong's Cosmic Engine. Between the years 1088 and 1092 CE, in the northern Song capital of Kaifeng, a statesman and polymath named Susong built a machine that historians still call astonishing. Susong lived from 1020 to 1101, and he documented his creation in a treatise so detailed that it survives today. The machine was a water-powered astronomical clock tower, and it stood about 12 meters tall, roughly 40 feet, a multi-story structure of wood. The tower was driven by a great water wheel. A steady flow of water filled a series of scoops on the wheel, and as each scoop filled, it tipped the wheel forward one step. That stepping motion is the key, because at the heart of the machine was the earliest known escapement in the world. An escapement is the device that turns a continuous force into regular, measured beats. It is the thing that makes a clock tick evenly instead of spinning freely. Susong's escapement predates the mechanical escapements of European clocks by about 2 centuries. The tower did far more than tell time. On top sat an armillary sphere, a set of bronze rings that tracked the positions of the sun, moon, and stars, and it was rotated by the machine to follow the heavens. Inside was a celestial globe modeling the star positions. On the front, small figurines, called jacks, appeared at intervals to ring bells and hold up tablets announcing the hour. It kept time to within a couple of minutes a day. It even contained what has been called the earliest endless chain drive, a loop of chain transmitting power between parts. The historian of Chinese science, Joseph Needham, studied the cosmic engine closely and brought it to Western attention. But the story has a dark ending. When the Jin dynasty captured Kaifeng in 1127, the clock was taken apart and moved. It was never successfully reassembled. Even Susong's own son could not rebuild it, and the knowledge was lost. Think about that. A machine that combined timekeeping, astronomy, and automation in a single tower, gone in one generation because the people who understood it were scattered. Working reconstructions exist today in museums, built from Susong's surviving treatise. It is a reminder that a technology is only as durable as the community that keeps it alive, and nowhere is that truer than on a rope bridge in the Andes. Number 6. The Quishuachaca Rope Bridge. High in the Cusco region of Peru, a bridge crosses the canyon of the Apurimac River. It is about 28 to 30 meters long and hangs some 15 meters above the water, It is made entirely of grass, and it is the last surviving traditional Inca rope suspension bridge, a piece of the great Inca road network known as the Capac Ñan, now recognized by UNESCO. What makes Queswachaka extraordinary is that it is rebuilt from scratch every single year, by hand, and has been for more than 500 years. Each summer, 4 neighboring communities gather for a festival that lasts 3 or 4 days. They harvest a tough Andean grass called koya, or ichu, and twist it into thin cords. Those cords are braided into ropes, and the ropes into thick cables. 4 heavy cables form the walkway, and 2 thinner ones form the handrails. Each community brings its own pre-made sections. Then, the old bridge is cut loose and dropped into the river, and the new one is woven into place beside it. Now remember what the Inca did not have. They had no iron. They had no wheel for transport. They did not even use the arch in their architecture. And yet, they spanned deep mountain gorges with suspension bridges that amazed the Spanish chroniclers who first saw them. At the height of the empire, more than 200 such bridges crossed a road system stretching some 40,000 kilometers. There is engineering wisdom in the grass. Those woven cables flex and sway. They absorb the force of wind and the weight of people moving across, bending instead of breaking. A rigid modern bridge has to fight those same forces, and engineers spend enormous effort adding dampers and joints to let steel move safely. The Inca solved it with a material that gives naturally. Researchers, including teams from MIT, have studied how the bridge distributes tension. What they find is a structure that works not despite being rebuilt every year, but because of it. The grass decays, so the community renews it, and in renewing it, they keep the knowledge alive. The bridge was added to UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage in 2013. It is engineering reimagined as something living and renewable, and from a structure meant to be rebuilt, we turn to one meant to last forever. Number 7. The Marib Dam. In what is now Yemen, on the edge of the Arabian desert, stood one of the greatest engineering works of the ancient world. It was the Great Dam of Marib, built by the Sabaean Kingdom, the biblical kingdom of Sheba. The earliest earthworks date to around the 8th century, BCE, and the dam would go on to function, with repairs, for well over 1,000 years. The dam stretched across a desert valley called the Wadi Adhana, catching the floodwaters that rushed down when the monsoon rains fell on the highlands. At its full development, it was about 680 meters long and rose as high as 15 meters, a huge embankment of packed earth faced with stone. Behind it, the captured water fed an irrigation network that watered around 100 square kilometers of fields, roughly 24,000 acres, supporting the flourishing oasis city of Marib. The control of the water came from 2 massive stone sluice structures, one at the north end and one at the south, each with spillways to release the flow into canals. These were built from precisely cut ashlar blocks, fitted with almost no mortar, and locked in places with lead dowels. The wealth these fields produced helped power the frankincense trade that made Sheba legendary. But a dam like this demands constant care. Sabaean inscriptions, carved in the ancient South Arabian script, record breach after breach and repair after repair by successive rulers. Over the centuries, silt slowly built up behind the dam, raising the water level and the cost of holding it back. The final catastrophic collapse came around the years 570 to 575 CE. That collapse was remembered so vividly that it appears in the Quran, in the chapter named for Saba, as the flood of the dam. It became a symbol of a whole civilization undone, and it is tied to the decline of Marib and the migration of Arabian tribes. Most modern dams are designed to last around a century. The Marib Dam held back a desert flood for more than 10 times that long, and it did it without a single bag of concrete. In the 1980s, a new dam was built nearby, funded by a sheikh of Abu Dhabi, whose own ancestry traced back to the people who once fled the ancient breach. The ruins of those stone sluices still stand. And speaking of holding structures together, our next invention hides its secret in a bowl of rice. Number 8. The Great Wall's sticky rice mortar. We think of the Great Wall of China as stone and brick, but what holds those stones together may be the real marvel, and it contains an ingredient from the kitchen. From about the 6th century CE, and especially during the Ming Dynasty between 1368 and 1644, Chinese builders mixed their mortar with sticky rice. They used it on the Great Wall, on city walls, on tombs, and on pagodas. In 2010, a chemist named Bingjian Zhang at Zhejiang University analyzed exactly what was going on, publishing the results in the journal Accounts of Chemical Research. The mortar is what scientists call an organic-inorganic composite. The inorganic part is slaked lime, the traditional binder. The organic part is amylopectin, a complex branching starch that comes from the soup of boiled sticky rice. Here is the chemistry that the Ming builders stumbled onto by pure trial and observation. As lime mortar hardens, it forms crystals of calcium carbonate. Left alone, those crystals grow coarse and uneven. The amylopectin from the rice acts as a control, an inhibitor that guides the crystals to grow small and tightly packed. The result is a dense, compact microstructure. That structure is what gives the mortar its remarkable properties. It is stronger than pure lime mortar. It resists water. It resists weathering. And it flexes just enough to survive earthquakes. The proof is in what has survived. Ming tombs and wall sections built with this mortar remain intact after 600 years. Researchers have reported that bulldozers struggled to demolish some sticky rice mortar tombs, and that weeds cannot even root in the joints. Other cultures added organic ingredients to their mortar too: egg white, animal blood, plant juices, but the sticky rice recipe is distinctly Chinese. What is striking is that conservators today still recommend sticky rice mortar for repairing ancient Chinese masonry. Modern Portland cement, it turns out, is often the wrong choice for old structures. It is too rigid and too incompatible, and it can trap moisture and crack the very stones it is meant to protect. A mortar made with rice, engineered at the molecular level centuries before anyone understood polymers, still outperforms the modern default. From materials science, we move to the ground beneath our feet and the roads the Romans laid. Number 9. The Appian Way. In the year 312 BCE, a Roman official named Appius Claudius Caecus began a road. It ran from Rome toward the south, first to Capua, and later all the way to Brundisium on the Adriatic coast, a total of about 563 kilometers. The Romans called it the Via Appia, and later the Regina Viarum, the Queen of Roads. More than 2,300 years later, you can still walk on the original stones. The durability was no accident. A Roman road was not a single layer of paving. It was built in courses, like a cake. First, the ground was dug out and leveled. Then came the statumen, a foundation of large stones. On top of that went the rudis, a layer of crushed stone bound with lime. Above that, the nucleus, a finer concrete. And finally, the summum dorsum, the surface of tightly fitted polygonal blocks of basalt, a hard volcanic stone the Romans called cels. The whole roadbed could be more than a meter deep. Just as important as the layers was the drainage. The Romans built the surface with a camber, a gentle crown, so that rainwater ran off to ditches on either side. Water is what destroys a road. It seeps in, freezes, and tears the surface apart. That is why modern asphalt has to be resurfaced every couple of decades. The Roman camber and ditches shed the water before it could do its work. The roads were laid dead straight wherever the land allowed. using a surveying instrument called the groma to sight the line, cutting through hills and bridging valleys to hold the course. Milestones marked every Roman mile, giving travelers measured distances, an idea we still rely on. The lower layers even used pozzolana concrete, made with volcanic ash, for extra cohesion. Across the empire, the network grew past 400,000 kilometers, of which around 80,000 were paved stone highways. The contrast with today is simple. Modern roads are built for speed and low cost, to be laid quickly and replaced often. Roman roads were built for permanence. The Appian Way saw armies march, and after the revolt of Spartacus in 71 BCE, saw 6,000 rebels crucified along its length. It was lined with tombs because Roman law forbade burial inside the city, and it is still here. From the road, we look up to the greatest dome the ancient world ever raised. Number 10. The Pantheon Dome. In the heart of Rome stands a building completed around the years 113 to 125 CE under the Emperor Hadrian. It still carries the inscription of Marcus Agrippa, who built an earlier temple on the spot. It is the Pantheon, and its dome remains, after nearly 1,900 years, the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world. Nothing built since, without steel, has surpassed it. The geometry is perfect. The interior diameter of the dome is 43.3 meters, about 142 feet, and that is exactly equal to the height from the floor to the top of the dome. This means a perfect sphere would fit inside the space precisely, touching the floor and the crown. At the very top is the oculus, a circular opening about 8.8 meters across, roughly 29 feet, and it is the only source of natural light in the building. But the real engineering is hidden in the concrete. The Romans graded the material. Down at the base of the dome, they used a dense, heavy aggregate of basalt. As the dome rises toward the oculus, they switch to lighter and lighter material, ending with porous volcanic pumice near the top. This means the dome is heaviest, where it needs strength, and lightest where extra weight would be dangerous. The walls themselves taper from about 6.4 meters thick at the base to only 1.2 meters near the opening. And 5 rings of coffers, the recessed square panels, are carved into the interior, cutting even more weight. There is no steel anywhere in it. The dome works purely in compression, every part pushing against its neighbors. A modern engineer cannot build a concrete dome this size without steel reinforcement, because ordinary concrete cracks under tension. Roman concrete was different. It used pozzolana, volcanic ash, and research at MIT in 2023 found that tiny lumps of lime in the mix, called lime clasts, actually let the concrete heal its own cracks over time. The building has never fallen out of use. It became a church, Santa Maria ad Martires, in the year 609 CE, which is a large part of why it survived. Rain still falls through the oculus, and a gently sloped floor with 22 hidden drains carries it away. Its granite columns were quarried in Egypt and shipped across the Mediterranean. Its dome inspired Brunelleschi in Florence and the builders of the United States Capitol. It remains a benchmark that modern architects still measure themselves against. Look across these 10 inventions, and a pattern emerges. Again and again, the ancient engineer worked with natural forces rather than trying to overpower them. Dujiangyan does not block the Min River. It divides it and lets the current sort itself out. The Nazca Puquios do not pump water. They let wind and gravity carry it. The Nashtifan mills do not chase the wind. They stand still and let it come from any direction. The same instinct shows up in materials. Zeolite, sticky rice, and Roman pozzolanic concrete are all local materials engineered at the smallest scale, not by chemistry as we know it, but by patient observation of what works. And a striking number of these systems are self-maintaining or self-healing. The flying sand spillway cleans itself. Roman concrete mends its own cracks. Sticky rice mortar seals its own joints against water. There's a second pattern too. These builders reached for whatever their landscape gave them. The Nazca lined their tunnels with river cobbles and Huarango wood. The Inca wove their bridge from mountain grass. The Sabaeans faced their dam with local stone and locked it with lead. The Maya carried volcanic rock 30 kilometers to filter their water. Nothing was imported from far away, and nothing depended on a supply chain that could break. The material was always at hand, and the design was always shaped to fit it. Modern technology tends to run the other way. It pours in energy, replaces parts on a schedule, and builds with rigid materials that resist rather than yield. These ancient designs made a different bet. They chose permanence and low maintenance over speed and power, and in many cases, that bet is still paying off today, quietly, without electricity, without spare parts, and without us noticing. None of these ancient engineers had the sciences we take for granted. There was no formal chemistry, no structural physics, no metallurgy as a discipline. So how did they do it? The answer is trial, error, and the patient handing down of knowledge across generations. Each of these inventions sits at the top of a long learning curve. The Persian windmill did not appear fully formed. It was the product of centuries of small refinements to catching wind. The sticky rice mortar was the result of builders testing additive after additive until one worked. We can even see the iteration written down. Sabaean inscriptions at Marib record generation after generation repairing and improving the dam. Li Bing codified a maintenance rule for Dujiangyan, dredge deep and build low, that is still followed today. This is empirical materials science, results achieved without equations. The Maya did not know the molecular formula of zeolite, but they knew that water passing through it came out clean. The Ming builders did not understand amylopectin, but they knew that rice made their mortar tougher. The Roman engineers did not have the chemistry to explain why volcanic ash made their concrete stronger and self-healing, but they knew to add it. Knowledge did not require theory. It required attention to local conditions and the willingness to test, observe, and remember. It is worth pausing on how much time this took. These were not the inventions of a single clever person in a single year. They were the accumulated wisdom of communities that watched their rivers, their winds, and their stones for generations, and slowly learned what each would and would not do. That kind of knowledge is deep, but it is also slow to build and easy to break, which is exactly what makes the next part of the story so sobering. There is a shadow over these achievements, because several of them nearly vanished, and some did. Susong's cosmic engine is the clearest case. It was dismantled after the fall of Kaifeng, and within a single generation, nobody could rebuild it, not even the inventor's own son. A machine at the frontier of its age was erased almost overnight. The Marib Dam tells a slower version of the same story. When the political will and the labor to maintain it finally ran out, the dam broke for the last time, and with it went the hydraulic culture that had sustained a kingdom for over 1,000 years. The Nashtifan Windmills face that danger now, as the last traditional millers grow old, and few remain to turn them. And Cueshuachaca is the sole survivor of more than 200 Inca bridges, kept alive only by 4 communities who refuse to let the weaving die. Even the Maya filtration at Tikal fits the pattern. When the city was abandoned and its population dispersed, the knowledge of how those reservoirs were built and maintained went with them, and it took a modern laboratory nearly 2,000 years later to work out what they had done. The technology survived in the ground long after the understanding of it was gone. The lesson runs through all of them. Complex knowledge is fragile. It is only as durable as the community that practices it. A technology can outlast empires, and then disappear the moment the people who understand it are scattered. Stone and mortar can wait patiently for centuries, but the human memory of how and why they were made is far more easily lost. The encouraging part of this story is that we are circling back. Modern researchers are actively studying these ancient solutions and finding real value in them. When scientists at MIT published their work in 2023 on the self-healing chemistry of Roman concrete, they were not just admiring the Pantheon. They were trying to build concrete that lasts longer and cracks less. The same is happening across fields. Engineers have proposed zeolite filtration, the very method the Maya used at Tikal, as a low-cost way to clean water in places that lack modern treatment plants. Wind power designers building vertical axis turbines are revisiting principles the Persians mastered 1,000 years ago. Conservators restoring historic buildings are choosing sticky rice mortar over modern cement because it is gentler and more compatible with old stone. The bridge builders of Queswachaka have even hosted engineering researchers who want to understand how a grass structure handles tension so gracefully. And the annual rebuild has become a kind of living laboratory. Every one of these ancient systems, studied closely, hands modern engineers a lesson they can use. There is a whole growing field of engineering built on this idea, sometimes called bio-inspired or passive design. It asks a simple question. Instead of forcing a solution with more energy and more machinery, what if we let physics and local materials do the work, the way the ancients did? The old inventions are not just monuments. They are teachers, and we are, slowly, becoming willing students again. So how do these ancient inventions still outperform today's tech? The answer is that they were built to a different standard. Modern technology is optimized for speed, for scale, and for cost. It is brilliant at doing things quickly and cheaply and at enormous size. But ancient technology was often optimized for one thing above all: endurance. That is the humbling fact at the center of every item on this list. A Maya filter still cleans water. A Persian mill still grinds grain. A Chinese waterworks still feeds millions. A Roman road still carries feet. And a Roman dome still stands, unmatched, after nearly 2,000 years. Meanwhile, the things we build often need repair within a decade and replacement within a lifetime. This is not about romanticizing the past. Modern medicine, modern communication, and modern engineering do things no ancient culture could dream of. But there is a kind of genius in building something that simply refuses to fail. And that genius deserves our respect. It leaves us with a question worth carrying home. Of everything we are building right now, with all our science and all our power, how much of it will still be working 2,000 years from today?